They say you never truly know someone until money is involved. I learned that lesson 3 days before my 75th birthday, when I heard my own daughter plotting my destruction. What I did next didn't just shock them. It destroyed everything they ever cared about. If you've ever been betrayed by family, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will shake you to your core. And trust me, you won't believe how this ends. Now let me take you back to where it all started. The mahogany floors of my Atlanta penthouse had always carried sound beautifully. That architectural feature, which I'd once loved, became the messenger of my worst nightmare. I was returning from my evening walk, my cane tapping softly as I approached my private study. That's when I heard them, my daughter Jasmine and her husband Robert, their voices drifting from the sitting room adjacent to my bedroom. "Mom's getting senile anyway," Jasmine said, her laughter cutting through the air like broken glass. "Did you see how she forgot where she put her reading glasses yesterday? This is perfect timing." My hand froze on the doorknob. My heart, which had survived 2 heart attacks and 75 years of life's cruelties, suddenly felt like it might give out right there. Robert's voice joined in, smooth and calculated. "The power of attorney papers are ready. Once she signs them tomorrow at the birthday celebration, we transfer everything within 48 hours. The offshore accounts are set up. She'll wake up with nothing but her Social Security check." "That woman is such a burden," Jasmine continued, "always wanting family dinners, always calling to check in. Once we have her money, we're cutting her off completely. Maybe we'll stick her in that state-run facility on the east side, the one with the roaches." They both laughed. My own daughter, the child I'd carried for 9 months, the girl I'd worked 3 jobs to put through private school and Harvard Business School, the woman I'd given every advantage, every opportunity, every ounce of my love. I'd built my empire from absolutely nothing. At 22, I started with a single food truck in downtown Atlanta, selling my grandmother's recipes. 53 years of grinding, saving, investing, and building turned that food truck into a restaurant empire spanning 12 states. $60 million, 237 restaurants, thousands of employees, all of it built with these 2 hands that now trembled against the wall. "What about her friends?" Robert asked. "Won't someone get suspicious?" "Please. She barely has any. We've been isolating her for months now. Remember how I convinced her that Patricia was talking behind her back, and how I told her that her book club friends were just using her for money. She trusts no one but us now. We're all she has. The manipulation, the calculated cruelty, every argument, every concern they'd planted in my mind over the past year suddenly made horrific sense. They hadn't been protecting me. They'd been imprisoning me. The lawyer is coming at 2 p.m. tomorrow," Robert said, "right after the birthday cake. We've timed it perfectly. She'll be emotional, surrounded by the few people we couldn't push away, and she'll sign anything we put in front of her." And then Jasmine's voice held an edge of excitement that made my blood run cold. "Then we're gone. The Maldives house is ready. We'll manage everything remotely. She can rot in that facility for all I care. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the money will be untouchable." I heard the clink of glasses. They were toasting my destruction, toasting their betrayal, toasting the murder of everything I'd built. Something died inside me in that hallway, but something else, something darker and far more dangerous, was born. They wanted to see me as a helpless old woman. They wanted to take everything I bled for. They wanted to throw me away like garbage. I would show them exactly what this 75-year-old woman was capable of. My cane barely made a sound as I moved away from that door. My hands had stopped shaking. My heart had stopped racing. In its place was a cold, calculating calm I hadn't felt since my early days in business when competitors tried to destroy me. I'd survived poverty. I'd survived racism in the business world. I'd survived my husband's death and raised Jasmine alone. I'd survived every obstacle life threw at me by being smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than anyone expected. They thought I was senile, weak, a burden to be disposed of. Tomorrow would be my 75th birthday, but tonight I would plan their complete annihilation. No lawyers, no courts, no mercy, just pure, cold revenge that would leave them begging for the prison cell they deserved. I walked to my study and locked the door. Then I opened my laptop and began making calls. Calls to people they didn't know existed. People from my past who owed me favors. People who understood that some betrayals required more than legal justice. By dawn, everything was in motion. The trap was set, and my dear daughter and son-in-law had no idea that the helpless old woman they'd mocked was about to become their worst nightmare. Sleep never came that night. Why would it? I sat in my study, the city lights of Atlanta spreading below my penthouse windows like fallen stars, and I planned every detail. My mind, sharper than it had been in years, cataloged every asset, every secret, every weapon in my arsenal. At 5 a.m., I made my first call. James answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. James had been my head of security for 27 years, retired now, but loyal beyond measure. I'd paid for his daughter's cancer treatment when insurance refused. Some debts transcend money. I need everything, I told him. Phone records, financial transactions, communications. Everything on Jasmine and Robert for the past 2 years. How deep? His voice held no judgment, only readiness. Ocean floor deep. And James? They can't know. Not even a whisper. Understood. Give me 6 hours. Next, I called Teresa. She'd been my accountant for 30 years before retiring to Costa Rica. We'd built empires together, weathered audits, and buried more than a few corporate raiders who'd underestimated us. I need to move assets. I said simply, invisible, untraceable. And I need shell corporations established by tonight. The nuclear option? She asked. Bigger. She whistled low. I'll make the calls. But sweetheart, whatever this is, be careful. Careful. I'd been careful my whole life. Careful built my empire. Careful kept me alive in a world that wanted to see me fail. But careful wouldn't save me from my own daughter's knife in my back. The sun rose over Atlanta, painting my penthouse in gold and amber. I showered, dressed in my finest purple suit, the one I wore when I closed my biggest deals. I applied my makeup with steady hands. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman I'd been at 30, building her empire one brick at a time. Fierce, unbreakable, dangerous. At 8 a.m., Jasmine knocked on my bedroom door, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. Morning, Mama. Happy early birthday. I made your favorite breakfast. I opened the door with a smile that would have fooled anyone. Baby girl, you're so good to me. She hugged me, and I hugged her back, feeling the Judas kiss for exactly what it was. Over her shoulder, I saw Robert in the kitchen, and our eyes met. He smiled. I smiled back, both of us wearing masks, but only one of us knowing the other's truth. Big day tomorrow, Jasmine said, guiding me to the table where pancakes and turkey bacon waited. You're 75th. We've planned something special. I'm sure you have, I said, cutting into my pancakes. I'm sure you have. Throughout breakfast, I played my part perfectly. I fumbled with my fork once. I asked Jasmine to repeat herself, pretending I hadn't heard. I mentioned misplacing my phone, watching her exchange that knowing glance with Robert. Every little performance fed their confidence, made them more certain of their plan. My phone buzzed at 10 a.m. A message from James with a single word, complete. At 11, Teresa confirmed the asset transfers were in motion. At noon, I excused myself for my afternoon nap, another habit they'd watched me develop over the past months. More ammunition for their narrative of my declining mental state. But I didn't nap. I sat at my computer and read through everything James had uncovered, and with each page, my rage transformed into something purer, colder, more devastating. They'd been planning this for 18 months. 18 months of manipulation, isolation, and preparation. They'd consulted with 3 different lawyers about the best way to execute power of attorney. They'd researched elder abuse laws to see how much they could get away with. They'd even looked into hastening my death to avoid the facility costs. That last search history, typed into Robert's laptop at 3 a.m. 6 weeks ago, made me pause. Medication interactions that cause heart failure in elderly patients. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves. They were plotting my murder, just dressed up to look like natural causes. I forwarded everything to a secure drive. Then I made another call, this one to someone I never thought I'd contact again. Vincent answered on the 5th ring. "It's been a long time," he said. "I need the kind of help you specialize in." "What kind?" "The permanent kind. The kind that leaves a message." Silence stretched between us. Vincent and I had history from my early days in business, back when the restaurant industry in Atlanta was controlled by people who didn't believe a woman, especially not one who looked like me, belonged in their world. Vincent had helped me send some messages back then. Strong messages. "How permanent?" he asked finally. "I want them to lose everything. Money, reputation, freedom, hope. I want them to understand what it feels like to be betrayed by the person they trust most. I want them destroyed so completely that they'll spend the rest of their lives knowing it was me who did it, and they'll never be able to prove it or stop it. That's not permanent. That's eternal." "Exactly. I'm listening." I spent the next hour laying out my plan. Vincent listened, occasionally asking questions, sometimes suggesting modifications. By the time we finished, I had a strategy that would have impressed Sun Tzu himself. "This is cold," Vincent said with something like admiration. "Remind me never to cross you. You won't get the chance." At 3 p.m., I emerged from my room to find Jasmine arranging flowers in the living room. "Mama, did you have a good rest?" "Wonderful, baby. I feel sharper than I have in months." Something flickered in her eyes. Concern? Suspicion? It vanished quickly behind her smile. "That's great. Listen, tomorrow after your party, there's someone we'd like you to meet. A lawyer friend who has some paperwork that'll make things easier for you. Just some basic stuff about your healthcare decisions and finances. Nothing to worry about." "That sounds lovely," I said. "You're always looking out for me." "Always, Mama. Always." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. Some might say revenge was beneath me, that I should take the high road, involve authorities, let justice take its course. But those people had never been betrayed like this. They'd never built something from nothing only to have their own child try to steal it all. They'd never been deemed worthless, a burden, something to be discarded. Tomorrow was my 75th birthday. It would also be the day Jasmine and Robert's entire world began to crumble. And unlike them, I wouldn't strike quickly. I would take my time. I would make them feel every cut, every loss, every moment of fear and desperation. They wanted to see me as prey. Tomorrow, they'd learn they'd been living with a predator all along. The morning of my 75th birthday arrived with deceptive sunshine. I woke at dawn, made myself coffee, and went through my final checklist. Every piece was in position. Every player knew their role. Now came the performance of my lifetime. Jasmine and Robert had transformed my penthouse into a celebration worthy of a queen they planned to dethrone. Flowers everywhere, catering from my own flagship restaurant. A birthday cake that probably cost more than they realized I knew about. About 40 guests, mostly business associates, I'd kept at arm's length per Jasmine's careful manipulation over the past year. I played my part beautifully. I wore the emerald dress Jasmine had bought me, the one with the tag still attached that she claimed was a gift, but had actually charged to my credit card. I smiled at guests, accepted their birthday wishes, and pretended not to notice Jasmine checking her watch every 10 minutes. At exactly 2 p.m., as predicted, the doorbell rang. "Oh, Mama," Jasmine said, her voice sugary sweet. "That must be Brandon, the lawyer I mentioned. He's got some simple papers for you to sign. Just routine stuff to make things easier." Brandon walked in carrying a leather briefcase, looking every bit the legitimate attorney. He probably was legitimate, probably had no idea he was participating in elder abuse. They'd been that careful. "Mrs. Winters," he said, shaking my hand. "Happy birthday. I have just a few documents that need your signature." "Of course," I said, letting my hand tremble slightly as I reached for my reading glasses. "Jasmine said it's just healthcare things." "Healthcare, financial management, just making sure everything's in order for your peace of mind," he said smoothly. We moved to my study. Jasmine, Robert, and Brandon. The door closed behind us. This was their moment. The culmination of 18 months of planning. Brandon spread the papers across my desk. Power of attorney documents, transfer authorizations, account access forms. Everything needed to hand my empire to my daughter on a silver platter. I picked up the pen, my hand shaking just enough to sell the performance. I brought it to the first signature line. Then I set it down. "You know," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong, "I think I'd like my own attorney to review these first." The room's temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Mama," Jasmine started, "we talked about this. It's just standard." I said. I interrupted, looking directly into her eyes. "I want my attorney to review them. Shouldn't take more than a few days." Robert stepped forward, and I saw something dangerous flash across his face. "Mrs. Winters, if you just— my study, my house, my decision." I stood up, steadier than I'd been in months. "Gentlemen, Jasmine, we have a party to get back to." Brandon looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. He gathered his papers. "Of course, Mrs. Winters. Just give me a call when you're ready." After he left, Jasmine's mask slipped just a fraction. "Mama, why are you being difficult? We're trying to help you." "Am I being difficult?" I asked innocently. "I just want to understand what I'm signing. At my age, I have to be careful. You never know who might try to take advantage of an old woman." Her jaw tightened. "Fine. Review them. But, Mama, these things are time sensitive. I'm sure they can wait a few days. After all, what's the rush?" They left my study, and I could hear them making excuses to guests about me being tired. I sat in my chair and allowed myself one small smile. Round one to me. But the real game was just beginning. That evening, after the last guest left and Jasmine and Robert retired to the guest suite, my phone buzzed. "Teresa, it's done. Every account, every asset moved to the new corporate structure. They're trying to access the accounts and getting error messages. They'll think it's just a system glitch for now." "Perfect. What about the restaurants?" "Transferred to the holding company. As of midnight, neither of them has any authority over any part of your empire. Legally, you still own everything, but it's structured in a way that'll take them months to untangle, if they ever figure it out. And the backup plan? Ready when you are. Say the word, and everything goes to the foundation. They won't see a penny." I hung up and made another call. Vincent, we're moving to phase 2, I said. The seeds are planted. Give it 48 hours. They won't know what hit them. Sleep came easier that night than it had in months. Tomorrow, Jasmine and Robert would start to realize something was wrong. But they wouldn't understand the magnitude of their mistake until it was far too late. At breakfast the next morning, Robert was on his phone, frowning. That's strange. I'm getting access errors on the accounts. Probably just the bank's systems updating, Jasmine said, but I caught the edge of worry in her voice. It happens. Yeah, probably, Robert agreed, but he didn't look convinced. I ate my oatmeal quietly, watching them try to hide their growing panic. Mama, Jasmine said carefully, have you had any trouble accessing your accounts lately? Should I have trouble? I asked. No, just asking. By afternoon, both of them were on their phones constantly, stepping out to the balcony for hushed conversations. By dinner, Robert's frustration was visible. All of them. Jasmine hissed at him when they thought I was out of earshot. Every single account. Error messages on everything. I can't get through to anyone at the bank. They keep saying they'll call back. I walked into the kitchen and they jumped apart. Everything okay? Fine, Mama, Jasmine said. Just some work stuff. On a Saturday, you two work too hard. Maybe you should take a vacation. Maybe we should, Robert muttered, not meeting my eyes. That night, phase 2 began in earnest. James had identified their associates, the people they'd been planning to help them move the money offshore. Vincent's team made contact with each one, delivering a simple message. The deal was off, and if they valued their freedom, they'd forget Jasmine and Robert's names entirely. Additionally, certain financial documents started appearing in certain places. An anonymous tip to the IRS about suspicious tax filings. Another tip to the FBI about possible elder abuse. Nothing concrete yet, just enough to start files, start investigations, start creating a paper trail. On Sunday morning, 2 things happened simultaneously. First, Jasmine and Robert discovered that the power of attorney documents Brandon had prepared were legally insufficient due to a technicality in the notarization. They'd have to start over, which meant more time, more opportunities for me to become confused and refuse to sign. Second, Robert's boss called. There were some irregularities in his expense reports that needed addressing immediately. Could he come in Monday morning? I watched them spiral, their confidence cracking like thin ice over deep water. And I smiled because they still had no idea how far I was willing to go. Monday morning brought rain, the kind that turns Atlanta's streets into rivers and makes the city feel like it's drowning. Appropriate, I thought, watching Robert leave for his meeting with his boss. Jasmine stayed behind, pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. You're going to wear out my floors, baby, I said from my chair, pretending to read the newspaper. She stopped, forced a smile. Just restless. Mama, can I get you anything? I'm fine. You seem stressed, though. Anything you want to talk about? For a moment, I saw her consider it, saw her almost break down and confess everything. But greed won out over guilt, as it always does. No, Mama, just work stuff. You know, I said carefully, if you ever need money, you can just ask me. You don't have to struggle. Her eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? I mean, you're my daughter. Everything I have will be yours someday anyway. If you need help now, I'm here. I watched her process this, saw the wheels turning. Was I suspicious? Or was this genuine? She couldn't tell, and that uncertainty was exactly what I wanted. That's sweet, Mama. But we're fine. Really? My phone rang. It was my doctor's office, right on schedule. I answered, making sure Jasmine could hear. Yes. Oh, the test results. Uh-huh. I see. How long? 6 months to a year? I understand. Thank you, doctor. I hung up slowly, letting my hand shake. Mama? Jasmine's voice held a mix of concern and something else. Hope, what did the doctor say? Oh, nothing serious. I lied. Just some age-related things. Nothing to worry about. But I planted the seed. The idea that maybe she didn't have to wait much longer. That maybe nature would do their dirty work for them. I could practically see her mind working, recalculating their timeline. What Jasmine didn't know was that there was no doctor's call. It was Teresa helping me perform another layer of deception. And that fake diagnosis would serve a very specific purpose in the days to come. Robert returned at noon, his face ashen. I was in my bedroom, but could hear everything through the door I deliberately left ajar. They fired me, he told Jasmine. They said there were irregularities in my expense reports going back 2 years. They're talking about pressing charges. What? That's impossible. You said you were careful. I was careful. Someone's setting me up. They had documentation, Jasmine, receipts, emails, everything. Did you mention me? Did you tell them about? No. Jesus, no. But baby, we need that money now. We need it yesterday. We're going to be buried in legal fees. The accounts are still locked. I've called every bank, every contact. Something's wrong, Robert. Something's really wrong. I smiled in my bedroom. James had done his work perfectly. Robert's expense fraud was real, just never noticed before. Now it had been conveniently discovered and documented. The first domino had fallen. Tuesday brought more rain and more problems for my dear daughter and son-in-law. Jasmine's business partner called with concerns about missing inventory at her boutique. Nothing major, just enough to require investigation and audits. More stress, more distractions, more cracks in their plan. Wednesday, the landlord of the commercial property where Jasmine's boutique operated called about overdue rent. Strange, since I knew Jasmine had paid that rent. Or thought she had. The payment had somehow been redirected, lost in a banking error that would take weeks to sort out. I watched them deteriorate in real time. Robert, usually so smooth and confident, became jumpy and paranoid. Jasmine stopped bothering with her appearance. Her designer clothes replaced with sweatpants. Her makeup forgotten. Mama, she said Thursday morning, her voice desperate, I need to borrow some money. Just $50,000. Just until we sort out this banking mess. $50,000. I clutched my chest dramatically. Baby, I don't have that kind of money lying around. But you're worth millions. Worth, yes, but liquid cash. That's all tied up in the business, in investments. You know that. She looked like she might cry. Good. What about the emergency fund? She pressed. What emergency fund? The one you always talked about. The account with the... Oh, that. I closed that months ago. Remember? You said I was being paranoid, keeping too much in cash. So I invested it like you suggested. I hadn't, of course. But she didn't need to know that. Friday afternoon, Vincent called with an update. The information's been leaked. The offshore accounts, the facility plans, the whole scheme. It's making its way through their social circles. Give it a week, and everyone they know will have heard about it. Beautiful, I said. That evening, Jasmine got a call from her best friend, or rather, former best friend. I listened to the one-sided conversation from my chair. No, that's not true. We weren't planning anything. Who told you that? Hello. Hello. She'd hung up. And she was the first of many. Saturday morning, 1 week after my birthday party, Jasmine and Robert sat me down. Their desperation had reached critical mass. Mama, Jasmine started, her voice shaking, we need to talk about your estate planning. My what? Your will, your assets. We need to make sure everything's in order. For your protection. Why the sudden interest? Because we love you, Robert said, but his eyes were cold. And we want to make sure you're taken care of. I looked between them. these two vipers in my home, and made a decision. You're right, I said. We should talk about my estate. In fact, I've made some changes recently. They leaned forward, hungry for information. I've decided to leave everything to charity. The restaurants, the properties, all of it. There's this wonderful foundation that helps elderly people who've been abused by their families. Seemed fitting. The silence that followed could have swallowed the world. You what? Jasmine whispered. I changed my will. Everything goes to the foundation. I was going to tell you, but with all this banking confusion and your money troubles, I didn't want to burden you with my decisions. Robert stood up so fast his chair fell over. You can't do that. Can't I? It's my money. But we're your family. Jasmine's voice rose to a shriek. We've taken care of you. Have you? I asked quietly. Have you really? Something in my tone made them pause, made them finally truly look at me, and what they saw made Robert's face go pale. What do you know? He asked. I smiled. Everything. The silence in my penthouse stretched like a blade between us. Jasmine and Robert stood frozen, their faces cycling through emotions. Shock, fear, calculation, and finally desperation. What do you mean, everything? Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper. I stood up, steadier than I'd been in months, and walked to my bar. Poured myself a bourbon. Something I hadn't done in their presence since they'd suggested alcohol was bad for someone my age. I took a sip, savoring both the burn and their growing panic. I said slowly that I heard you the night before my birthday. Every word, every laugh, every detail of your plan to rob me, dump me, and disappear to the Maldives. Jasmine's face crumbled. Mama, I can explain. Explain what? How you spent 18 months isolating me from my friends. How you researched the best ways to have me declared incompetent. Or maybe you want to explain Robert's search history about medication interactions that cause heart failure. Robert's hand moved toward his phone, but I was faster. I wouldn't. Vincent's people are watching this building. You make one call, try to leave, do anything I don't approve, and every piece of evidence I have goes to the FBI, the IRS, and every news outlet in Atlanta. You're bluffing, Robert said, but his voice shook. I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording. Their voices filled my penthouse, crystal clear. That woman is such a burden. We'll stick her in that state-run facility, the one with the roaches. Jasmine sank into a chair, her legs giving out. Oh, God! There's more? I continued. Transcripts of your communications with the offshore banking specialists. Records of the shell companies you set up. Documentation of every penny you've stolen from me over the past year. Yes, I know about that too. The redirected payments, the fake vendor invoices, all of it. What do you want? Robert asked, his businessman facade finally shattering. Money? We'll pay you back. I laughed, a sound without humor. Pay me back? With what? The accounts you can't access? The jobs you're about to lose? The reputation that's already circulating through Atlanta society? You have nothing I want, Robert, because I already took everything you thought you had. What are you talking about? Jasmine asked. The banking errors? Me. The expense report investigation? Me. The missing inventory? The redirected rent? The mysterious rumors? All me. Every domino that's fallen this week, I pushed it. You too wanted to see what a helpless old woman could do. Congratulations. You're seeing it. Robert's face turned red with rage. He took a step toward me, his fists clenched. Instantly, my study door opened, and two of Vincent's men stepped out. They'd been there the whole time, listening, recording everything. I wouldn't, one of them said calmly. Robert froze. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice cold as ice. You're going to sit down, and you're going to listen to every detail of what I've done to you. and what I'm still going to do. Because this is just the beginning. They sat. They had no choice. First, your finances. Every account you thought you had access to, gone. Restructured through holding companies so complex it would take a team of lawyers years to untangle. Your credit, ruined. I made sure of that. The offshore accounts you set up, the FBI knows about them. They're very interested in having a conversation with you both. But we haven't actually transferred anything yet, Jasmine protested weakly. Doesn't matter. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, potential attempted murder, given Robert's research into fatal medication interactions. The intent is there, documented, and recorded. You might beat some charges, but not all of them. You're our mother, Jasmine said, tears streaming down her face. How can you do this? How can I? My voice rose for the first time. How can you? I gave you everything, every opportunity, every advantage. I loved you more than my own life, and you were going to throw me away like trash. Don't you dare question what I can do when you were planning to kill me. We weren't going to kill you, Robert said. Really? Then what was the medication research for? A school project. He had no answer. Second, I continued, your reputations, by now, everyone in your social circles knows what you tried to do. The story's spreading like wildfire. Your friends won't return your calls. Your business contacts are ghosting you. Your country club membership revoked. You're pariahs, and that's just the beginning. Third, your freedom. I have enough evidence to put you both in prison for a very long time. But here's the thing, I'm not going to use it. Not yet. They looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. Foolish hope. I'm not sending you to prison because prison would be too easy. 3 meals a day, a roof over your heads, health care. No, I want you to experience exactly what you planned for me. I want you to struggle, to be poor, to be desperate, to know what it's like when the people you trust betray you. What are you saying? Jasmine whispered. I'm saying you're going to leave this penthouse tonight with nothing but the clothes on your backs. I'm saying you're going to struggle to find jobs because your reputations are destroyed. I'm saying you're going to feel every single day what it's like to have everything ripped away from you. You can't do this, Robert said. I already have. The only question is whether I also send you to prison. That decision depends entirely on your behavior going forward. What do you want from us? Jasmine asked, her voice breaking. I want you to suffer. I want you to regret. I want you to spend every day for the rest of your lives knowing that you destroyed yourselves. That if you just loved me, just been decent human beings, you'd have inherited everything eventually. But you couldn't wait. You couldn't even pretend to care. I walked to the window, looking out over the city I'd conquered. You have 1 hour to pack a single bag each. Then you leave. You don't contact me. You don't come back. You don't tell anyone what happened here tonight. If you do, the evidence goes public and you go to prison. Understood? They nodded, broken and defeated. And one more thing, I said, turning back to face them. Every month, I'm going to send you a statement showing exactly how much my empire has grown, how much you could have had if you'd just been patient, if you just loved your mother. I want you to see in dollars and cents exactly what your greed cost you. Jasmine was sobbing now, her face buried in her hands. Robert stared at the floor. His empire of arrogance collapsed around him. 59 minutes. I said. They scrambled to their feet and ran to the guest suite. I listened to them pack, their voices raised in argument, in blame, in despair. Vincent's men stood silently, making sure they took nothing that wasn't theirs. When they emerged, bags in hand, Jasmine tried one last time. Mama, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't do this. I looked at her. This stranger wearing my daughter's face, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I loved you more than anything in this world, I said, and you tried to destroy me. Now live with what you've done. Get out. They left. The elevator doors closed behind them, and they were gone. I poured myself another bourbon and sat in my chair, listening to the silence of my penthouse. Vincent's men departed quietly, their job done. I was alone, but I wasn't finished. Not even close. 3 months passed, and I watched their destruction from my penthouse like a general surveying a battlefield. Every move calculated, every strike precise. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was art. Jasmine found a job as a cashier at a grocery store. Not one of mine, thankfully, but close enough that some of her former friends saw her there, saw her wearing that uniform, scanning items for people who used to serve her at parties. I made sure those encounters happened. A word here, a suggestion there, ensuring her humiliation was complete and public. Robert couldn't find work at all. His name was poison in Atlanta's business community. He took odd jobs, manual labor, anything to pay for the tiny apartment they'd rented in a part of town they'd never have visited in their previous life. Their BMW was repossessed. Their designer clothes sold on consignment. Their pride ground into dust under the weight of their own greed. And every month, as promised, I sent them a financial statement. My empire had grown by $12 million since they'd left. $12 million they would have inherited someday if they'd just waited, just loved me, just been human. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Closing hook. Chapter 6. What I did next made everything before look like child's play. The months of suffering I'd put them through were just the appetizer. What was coming would break them in ways they couldn't imagine. And you're going to want to hear every detail. Trust me. Closing CTA, Chapter 6. If you think this story is intense now, wait until you hear what happens next. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because the second half of this revenge is going to blow your mind. Drop a comment telling me what you do in my situation, and let's get to the finale where everything explodes. You won't believe how far I was willing to go. Phase 2 of my plan began on a Tuesday morning. I made a call to an investigative journalist I'd known for years, Amanda Price. She owed me a favor from back when I'd helped her break a story about corruption in Atlanta's restaurant inspection system. Amanda, I have a story for you about elder abuse, corporate fraud, and attempted murder. Interested? Always. What are we talking about? My daughter and son-in-law. But here's the thing. I don't want them arrested. I want them exposed. I want the world to know exactly what they tried to do in their own words with all the evidence. I want their story to become a cautionary tale. That's unusual. Most people want justice. Justice is subjective. I want something more permanent. I want their names to be synonymous with betrayal for the rest of their lives. She paused. You're serious? Completely. The article ran 2 weeks later in Atlanta's biggest newspaper. The daughter who tried to steal everything, an elder abuse nightmare. Amanda had done her research, had interviewed sources, had included the audio recordings, the documentation, everything. She painted a picture of calculated cruelty that shocked the city. The response was immediate and massive. National news picked it up. Morning shows called. Social media exploded. Jasmine and Robert became the most hated couple in America overnight. But that still wasn't enough. I hired private investigators to track every move they made. Not to harm them, but to ensure they couldn't rebuild. Every job application. I made sure their potential employers saw the articles. Every apartment they tried to rent, I ensured the landlords knew who they were. Every attempt to start over, I made sure their past followed them. Some might call it cruel. I called it appropriate. For months after I kicked them out, Robert tried to contact me through an intermediary. He wanted to apologize, wanted to make amends. I sent back a single message. You had your chance for forgiveness when you planned my destruction. That opportunity died the moment you laughed about putting me in a facility with roaches. Jasmine tried a different approach. She showed up at one of my restaurants, begging to see me. Security turned her away, but not before she caused a scene, crying and pleading. The incident was recorded by other diners and went viral. More humiliation, more consequences. I felt no sympathy. None. Every tear she shed was a deposit on the debt she owed me. Every moment of Robert's desperation was interest accrued. 6 months in, something unexpected happened. Robert left Jasmine. I found out through my investigators. He blamed her for everything, said it was her idea, her plan, her greed. He filed for divorce and disappeared to another state, trying to outrun his reputation. It didn't work. I made sure his story followed him to Texas, then to Colorado, then to Oregon. Everywhere he went, the past caught up. Jasmine, now alone, completely broke and abandoned by everyone she'd ever known, did something that almost made me feel human again. Almost. She attempted suicide. The hospital called me because I was still listed as her emergency contact. They said she'd taken pills, been found by a neighbor, would survive but needed psychiatric care. I sat with that information for a long time. My daughter, the child I'd carried and raised and loved, had been broken so completely that she tried to end her own life. A small part of me, the part that remembered her as a little girl, felt pain. The larger part of me, the part that remembered her laughter as she planned my destruction, felt nothing but cold calculation. I didn't visit her in the hospital, but I did make a call. Make sure she gets the best psychiatric care. I told the hospital administrator. I'll cover the costs, but she's not to know it's from me. Understood, Mrs. Winters. It was a mercy I probably shouldn't have extended, but I'm not a monster. I'm just a mother who refuses to be a victim. 7 months after I kicked them out, I received a letter. Handwritten, tear-stained, pages and pages of Jasmine's regret and apology. She told me about the darkness that had consumed her, about losing Robert, about the suicide attempt. She told me she understood now what she'd done, what she'd destroyed, what she'd lost. She begged, not for money or help, but for forgiveness. Just forgiveness. Just the knowledge that someday, somehow, I might not hate her anymore. I read that letter 3 times. Then I burned it, because forgiveness requires repentance, and repentance requires consequences. She was living her consequences. That was her repentance. But forgiveness? That was a gift she didn't deserve and would never receive. 8 months in, Vincent called with interesting news. Robert's in trouble. Real trouble. Tried to run a scam on some people in Oregon. People who don't involve the police when they're crossed. He's asking for help. Let him ask, I said. He's asking for you specifically. Says you're the only one who can help him now. The irony was beautiful. The man who'd planned to steal everything from me now needed me to save him from his own greed. Tell him I said to experience exactly what he planned for me, abandonment by the people who should care. And then tell him I hope he learns what it means to be truly helpless. Cold, Vincent said, but he sounded approving. He earned it. 9 months after my 75th birthday, I sat in my penthouse and reviewed the wreckage. Jasmine was working 2 jobs, living in a shelter, attending court-mandated therapy. Robert was somewhere in Oregon, hiding from people he'd scammed, just as broken and desperate as I'd wanted him to be. My empire had grown to $72 million. $72 million they could have had, should have had, would have had if they'd just loved me. But they'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. The phone rang. It was Teresa. "The foundation paperwork is complete," she said. "Everything's set up exactly as you specified." "Good," I said. "When I die, I want every penny to go to helping elderly people who've been abused by their families. I want scholarships for kids who grew up poor like I did. I want programs that teach young people what real love and loyalty mean. I want my money to mean something. It will. You've built something good from something terrible." After I hung up, I poured myself a bourbon and stood at my window looking out over Atlanta. The city sparkled below me, full of lights and life and possibility. Some might say I went too far, that revenge consumed me, that I should have been the bigger person. But those people didn't hear what I heard, didn't feel what I felt, didn't have their own child laugh about throwing them away like garbage. I did what I had to do. I protected myself. I punished those who tried to destroy me, and I made sure they'd never forget the cost of their betrayal. Tomorrow, I would wake up and continue running my empire, continue building, growing, thriving. At 75 years old, I was more alive than I'd been in years. And somewhere out there, Jasmine and Robert would wake up to another day of consequences. That was enough for me. The article Amanda wrote didn't just ruin Jasmine and Robert. It started something bigger, something I hadn't anticipated but found deeply satisfying. Within weeks, a movement began. People started coming forward with their own stories of family betrayal, of children scheming to steal from aging parents, of calculated cruelty disguised as care. My phone rang constantly, lawyers wanting to use my case as precedent, elder advocacy groups asking for my support, television producers wanting to tell my story. I refused most of them, but I did accept an invitation from a congressional committee studying elder abuse, not to testify publicly, but to consult privately on legislation. I spent 3 days in Washington, sitting in quiet rooms with senators and representatives, telling them exactly how easy it had been for my daughter to nearly succeed, how the system was built to trust family members, how power of attorney could be weaponized, how financial institutions rarely questioned transactions that seemed legitimate on paper. "What would you recommend?" Senator Phillips asked me. She was a woman in her 60s, sharp as a tack, and genuinely disturbed by what she'd heard. "Mandatory third-party review for any power of attorney granted to someone who stands to inherit," I said. "Automatic audits when large asset transfers occur for people over 70. Criminal penalties that actually mean something, not just slaps on the wrist. And education. Teach elderly people the warning signs before it's too late." "And in your case," she asked, "what made you realize what was happening?" "I overheard them by accident. I admitted, if I hadn't, I'd probably be in a state facility right now, wondering where my life went. That's the terrifying part. How many people don't get that lucky accident? How many are suffering right now because they trusted the wrong people?" The legislation that resulted from those meetings was nicknamed the Winters Act by the media, though officially it had some boring bureaucratic name. It passed both houses with overwhelming support. For once, politicians agreed on something. I'd turned my pain into protection for others. That felt like victory. But back home, the personal war continued. 10 months after everything began, I received a visitor I didn't expect. Patricia, my former best friend, whom Jasmine had convinced me was talking behind my back. I'd pushed her away cruelly, believing my daughter's lies. I read the article. Patricia said when I let her into my penthouse. We sat in my living room, two old women navigating the aftermath of manipulation. "I understood then why you cut me off. I want you to know I never said those things Jasmine claimed. I never would. I know that now," I said quietly. "I'm sorry I believed her." "She was your daughter. Of course you believed her." Patricia reached across and took my hand. I'm sorry for what she did to you, for what she almost succeeded in doing. We talked for hours. She'd brought others with her, my book club friends who'd also been pushed away by Jasmine's careful lies. One by one, they told me they'd tried to reach out over the past months, but weren't sure if I'd want to see them. I want to see you, I said, and meant it. I want my life back. The real one, not the prison cell my daughter built around me. They stayed for dinner. We laughed and cried and remembered who we used to be before Jasmine's poison. It felt like stepping back into sunlight after months in darkness. That evening, after they left, I realized something important. Jasmine hadn't just tried to steal my money. She tried to steal my life, my relationships, my identity. She'd wanted to reduce me to nothing but a signature on papers. The money I'd taken back from her felt good. But this, reclaiming my friendships and my autonomy, felt better. 11 months in, Robert made the news again. He'd been arrested in Oregon for fraud, exactly as Vincent had predicted. The people he'd scammed had called the police instead of handling it themselves. He was looking at serious prison time. I received a letter from his court-appointed attorney asking if I'd be willing to provide a character reference. The lawyer probably didn't know the full story, just saw that Robert's mother-in-law was wealthy and might help. I wrote back with a detailed account of everything Robert had done to me, including evidence I'd kept. I made sure that letter became part of his court file. If he wanted my involvement in his case, he got it, just not the way he hoped. He was sentenced to 8 years. The judge specifically referenced my letter, calling Robert's pattern of behavior toward vulnerable people particularly disturbing. I felt nothing when I heard the sentence. No satisfaction, no guilt, nothing. Robert had become irrelevant to me. He was just consequences walking, nothing more. Jasmine sent another letter. This one was different. No begging, no pleading, just facts. She'd been diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. She was on medication now, seeing a therapist twice a week. She'd lost 60 pounds from stress. She'd aged a decade in less than a year. She was working at a call center and living in a room she rented from an elderly woman who'd heard her story and taken pity on her. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she wrote. I know I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for money or help. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I am, what I became. I wake up every day and hate myself for what I did to you. That's my life now, hating myself and trying to figure out how I turned into such a monster. I kept that letter, didn't burn it like the first one. I kept it in my desk drawer, and sometimes, late at night, I'd take it out and read it. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because it was proof. Proof that she finally understood. Proof that the consequences had reached deep enough to touch her soul. 1 year after my 75th birthday, I threw myself another party. This time, the guest list was different. Patricia and my book club friends. James and Teresa and Vincent. People who'd helped me, stood by me, or simply refused to abandon me when I'd been alone. We celebrated in my penthouse, the same place where Jasmine had planned my destruction. But the energy was completely different. This was joy, not performance. Love, not manipulation. Truth, not lies. To survival, Patricia toasted, and to the strongest woman I know. To revenge done right, Vincent added with a wry smile. To never underestimating a 75-year-old woman with a score to settle, Teresa said, we laughed and drank and told stories. For the first time in over a year, I felt completely at peace. My empire had grown to $75 million. I'd established the foundation that would receive it all when I died. I'd helped pass legislation that would protect countless elderly people from what I'd nearly suffered. I'd reclaimed my life and my friendships. And somewhere out there, Jasmine worked her call center job and hated herself. Robert sat in an Oregon prison, both of them living with the weight of what they'd done. Do you ever regret it? Patricia asked me later, when the party had wound down, and it was just the two of us on my balcony, looking out over Atlanta, going as hard as you did. I thought about it honestly. No, they didn't just try to steal my money. They tried to erase me, to make me nothing, to end my life, either through neglect or through Robert's medication research. They laughed about it, celebrated it. If I'd shown mercy, if I'd let them off easy, what would that have taught them? What would it have taught me? That you're better than them? Patricia suggested, I am better than them, but being better doesn't mean being weak. It means being strong enough to defend yourself and others. What I did to them protects every elderly person who might have crossed their path. It sends a message that we're not helpless, that we won't be victims quietly. Patricia nodded slowly. I suppose that's true. Besides, I added, mercy is for people who are sorry. Really sorry. Not just sorry they got caught. Jasmine's letters suggest she might be getting there. Maybe in another 10 years, I'll feel differently. But not yet. Not nearly yet. We stood in comfortable silence, two survivors watching the city lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. My empire needed managing. The foundation needed structuring. Life went on. But tonight, I was simply a woman who'd fought for herself and won. And that was enough. 14 months after everything began, I received a call from the psychiatric facility where Jasmine had been treated after her suicide attempt. Dr. Richardson, her primary therapist, asked if I'd be willing to meet with her. Not with Jasmine. She clarified quickly. Just me. There are some things I think you should know about your daughter's mental state and treatment. I agreed, curious despite myself. Dr. Richardson was a woman in her 50s, calm and professional. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in Midtown Atlanta. She carried a folder, but didn't open it immediately. First, let me be clear, she said. I'm not here to ask you to reconcile with Jasmine or to feel sorry for her. What she did to you was unconscionable. But I am here because I believe you should have the full picture of what's happening with her. I'm listening. Jasmine is genuinely suicidal, not manipulatively, so not attention-seeking. She has a detailed plan and the means to carry it out. The only thing stopping her is a promise she made to me that she'd give treatment 1 full year before making any final decisions. I sipped my coffee, processing this. And you're telling me this because you're her only living family. Because if she succeeds in killing herself, you'll have to live with that. And because, frankly, I think there's something you don't know about Jasmine's history that might contextualize, though not excuse, her actions. What are you talking about? Dr. Richardson opened her folder. Did you know that when Jasmine was 16, she was sexually assaulted by someone she trusted? Someone in your business circle. The world tilted. What? She never told you. She was ashamed, scared, confused. The assault happened at one of your company events. A man whose name she's still too frightened to speak took her into a back office and raped her. I felt sick. That's impossible. I would have known. She would have told me. She tried. She came to you the next day and started to tell you what happened. But you were in the middle of a major business crisis. Do you remember? That acquisition that nearly fell through. I did remember. 15 years ago, the biggest deal of my career, the one that took my empire from regional to national. I'd been stressed beyond belief, working 20-hour days. She said you told her you didn't have time for teenage drama, that you'd talk later. But later never came because you were so consumed with work. Eventually, she stopped trying to tell you. Tears stung my eyes. I don't remember that conversation. She does. Vividly. and it broke something in her. She decided that your business, your empire, mattered more to you than she did, that she'd always come second to money. That's not true. I loved her more than anything. I believe you, but that's not what she experienced. And that assault, combined with feeling like you didn't care, started a downward spiral. She began seeing money as the thing that took her mother from her, as the thing that mattered more than her pain. Dr. Richardson pulled out more documents. In college, she was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. She self-medicated with alcohol. She had 2 more toxic relationships with men who used her. She developed a deep resentment toward your wealth because in her mind, it represented her abandonment. This doesn't excuse what she did. I said, my voice hard. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. When she met Robert, he recognized her resentment and weaponized it. He convinced her that taking your money wasn't theft. It was reclamation, that you owed her for years of emotional neglect. He groomed her, essentially, into believing that what they planned was justified. I sat back, my mind reeling. All these years, I'd thought I was being a good mother by building an empire to leave to Jasmine. But she'd experienced it as neglect, as proof that money mattered more than love. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, because Jasmine's greatest fear isn't poverty or humiliation. It's that she became exactly what she hated. She spent years resenting you for choosing money over her, and then she tried to do the exact same thing. The irony is destroying her. She sees herself as her own worst nightmare. So what do you want from me? Dr. Richardson closed her folder. I want you to know that what happened between you and Jasmine isn't simple. It's not just a story of a greedy daughter betraying a loving mother. It's a tragedy that's been building for decades. And I want you to decide, with full information, whether there's any path forward that doesn't end with your daughter dead. I left that meeting feeling like I'd been hollowed out. Everything I thought I knew had been complicated by information I couldn't verify, but couldn't dismiss. That night, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I pulled out old photo albums, pictures of Jasmine as a baby, as a child, as a teenager. I looked for the moment when things changed, when I lost her without realizing it. And I found it, a picture from that acquisition period. Jasmine was 16, standing in the background of a photo at one of my company events. I was in the foreground, shaking hands with investors, smiling. But Jasmine's face in the background, it was hollow, empty, already gone. How had I not seen it? I called Teresa. I need you to find someone for me. Someone who was at my company event 15 years ago. Someone who assaulted my daughter. Are you sure? Teresa asked carefully. I need to know if it's true. And if it is, I need to know who. It took Teresa 2 weeks, but she found him. A mid-level executive who'd worked for one of my suppliers. He'd been fired 5 years ago for sexual harassment of multiple employees. He had a pattern, a history, and Jasmine fit his victim profile perfectly. I sat with that information for a long time. Then I made a decision that surprised even me. I arranged for that man to be investigated, prosecuted, and publicly exposed. I provided funding for his other victims to come forward. I made sure his crimes caught up with him, even 15 years later. He went to prison, not for what he did to Jasmine. The statute of limitations had passed, but for what he'd done to others. Justice, delayed but delivered. Then I did something harder. I wrote Jasmine a letter. I didn't know. I wrote. I should have known, should have seen, should have listened. My failure to protect you doesn't excuse what you did to me. But your pain doesn't deserve to be ignored either. I'm not offering forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm offering acknowledgement. What happened to you was real. What I failed to do was real. And what you became because of it is a tragedy I played a part in creating. I sent the letter through Dr. Richardson. I didn't expect a response. Didn't want one, really. But I got one anyway. Thank you, Jasmine wrote back. Not for forgiveness. Just for seeing me. For the first time in 15 years, I feel like you see me. That's more than I deserved. More than I hoped for. I kept that letter too, right next to the previous one in my desk drawer. I wasn't ready to forgive. Might never be ready, but I was ready to acknowledge that the truth was more complicated than I'd wanted to believe. And somehow that felt like progress. 18 months after, my life had settled into a new rhythm. My empire continued to grow, now approaching $80 million. The foundation I'd established was operational, already helping elderly victims of financial abuse. And I'd reconnected with a life outside of revenge. But the situation with Jasmine remained complicated. Dr. Richardson called again, this time with a proposal. Jasmine has made significant progress in therapy. She's been sober for a year, working steadily, attending support groups. She wants to do something called restorative justice with you, if you're willing. What does that mean? It means sitting down together with mediation and allowing her to fully account for what she did while you express the impact it had on you. It's not about forgiveness or reconciliation. It's about truth and accountability. I've already held her accountable, I said, very thoroughly. You've punished her, yes, but she hasn't had the chance to truly face you with the full weight of what she did. And you haven't had the chance to say everything you need to say directly to her. This would be for both of you. I thought about it for a week before agreeing, not because I owed Jasmine anything, but because Dr. Richardson was right. There were things I needed to say that I'd never had the chance to express directly. We met in a neutral office with Dr. Richardson and another mediator present. Jasmine looked like a ghost of herself. Thin, aged, wearing clothes from a thrift store. But her eyes were different, clearer, present in a way they hadn't been before. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I said nothing, just waited. I want to start by acknowledging everything I did to you, Jasmine began, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I isolated you from your friends through manipulation and lies. I convinced you to trust only me so I could control you. I planned to steal everything you'd worked for. I planned to abandon you in a facility where you'd suffer. I researched ways to potentially end your life to access my inheritance faster. She paused, tears streaming down her face. I laughed about it. I celebrated your anticipated suffering. I treated you like an obstacle to overcome rather than a person I loved. I became a monster. Yes, I said coldly. You did. There's no excuse for what I did. The assault I experienced doesn't excuse it. My resentment about feeling neglected doesn't excuse it. Robert's manipulation doesn't excuse it. I made choices, evil choices, and I own them completely. Do you? I asked, because owning them means accepting the consequences. All of them. Forever. I accept them. I accept that you destroyed my life. I accept that I deserve it. I accept that I'll spend the rest of my life carrying the weight of what I did to you. I accept that you may never forgive me and that I have no right to ask. I leaned forward. Here's what you don't understand, Jasmine. It's not about the money. I have money. I can make more money. What you tried to steal was my dignity, my autonomy, my right to exist as a human being rather than an inconvenience. You tried to reduce me to nothing. That's unforgivable. I know. Do you really understand that you weren't just stealing money? You were trying to delete me as a person, to erase my existence, to make me suffer specifically because I was old and therefore worthless in your eyes. I understand now. I didn't then, but I do now. And what changed? What suddenly made you capable of understanding? Jasmine took a shaky breath. When you destroyed my life, when you took everything from me, I experienced exactly what I'd planned for you. And I realized that the person who planned that, who could laugh about that, wasn't human, was something broken and evil. I had to face that I'd become the thing I'd hated most, which was someone who valued money over people, someone who saw human beings as obstacles, someone who became their worst fear. She looked up at me. I became you, or rather, the version of you I'd created in my head. The mother who chose money over her daughter, except you never actually were that person. I was. The silence that followed was heavy with truth. I loved you more than anything. I said, finally, I worked myself to death building that empire because I wanted to give you everything I never had, every opportunity, every advantage, every protection. And yes, I missed things. I missed your assault. I missed your pain. I failed you in ways I'll have to live with. But I never stopped loving you. You, on the other hand, stopped loving me long before you planned to steal from me. You're right, Jasmine whispered. So, what do you want from this meeting? Absolution? Forgiveness? A relationship? No. I want you to know that I see what I did. I see what I am. And I'm trying every day to become someone different. Not for you. Not to get anything from you. Just because I can't live as the person I became. I stood up. Then do that. Become someone different. Spend the rest of your life making amends. Not to me, but to the world. Help other people who've been victims of what you tried to do. Dedicate yourself to something other than your own gain. Maybe in 20 years, if you've actually changed, we can have another conversation. But not before. Understood, Jasmine said. I walked toward the door, then paused. And Jasmine, don't kill yourself. Don't take the easy way out. Live with what you did. Make it mean something. That's the only form of justice that matters now. I left without looking back. That night, I wrote in a journal I'd started keeping. Today I spoke my truth to Jasmine. I don't know if it changed anything for her, but it changed something for me. I'm no longer carrying her weight. She has to carry it herself now. And somehow that feels like freedom. 2 months later, I heard through Dr. Richardson that Jasmine had started volunteering with an elder advocacy group. She was using her story, her shame, to educate families about the warning signs of financial abuse. She'd become a cautionary tale, but one that might save others. I didn't reach out, didn't acknowledge it, but I noted it, filed it away as evidence that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this destruction. My 77th birthday approached. 2 years since this all began. 2 years of revenge, revelation, and unexpected complexity. I destroyed my daughter's life, exposed her crimes, and forced her to face herself. I'd also learned truths about my own failures that I couldn't ignore. Some might say I should forgive her, that holding on to anger would poison me, but they didn't understand. I wasn't holding on to anger. I was holding on to boundaries, onto self-respect, onto the knowledge that some betrayals fundamentally change relationships forever. Forgiveness might come someday, or it might not. Either way, I would survive. I would thrive. I would continue building my empire and using it to help people who needed protection. And Jasmine would continue trying to become someone worthy of existing in the same world she tried to destroy. That was enough. For now, it was enough. 3 years after, on a crisp October morning, I sat in my attorney's office finalizing the last details of my legacy. The empire had grown to $92 million, 287 restaurants, thousands of employees, Decades of work crystallized into numbers that still seemed unreal. The foundation structure is airtight, my attorney confirmed. Upon your death, everything transfers to the Winters Foundation for Elder Protection and Youth Opportunity. Not a penny goes to Jasmine or any blood relative. Are you certain about this? Completely certain, I said. My blood family tried to destroy me. My real family is everyone who stood by me when it mattered. The foundation would fund several initiatives: legal support for elderly victims of financial abuse, scholarships for young people from poverty like I'd been, programs teaching financial literacy, and elder advocacy. My money would protect people, would lift them up, would mean something beyond just accumulation. That evening, I hosted a dinner at my penthouse. Not a party, just an intimate gathering of the people who mattered. Patricia and my book club friends. James, now 80, but still sharp as ever. Teresa, who'd flown in from Costa Rica. Vincent, who'd become an unlikely friend through all of this. To 3 years of survival, Patricia toasted, and to the woman who taught us all what real strength looks like. To revenge done with style, Vincent added with his characteristic dark humor. To second chances, Teresa said, looking at me meaningfully, for those who earn them. We ate and laughed and told stories. I looked around at these faces, these people who'd helped me or stood by me or simply refused to abandon me when I was vulnerable. This was family, not blood, but choice, not obligation, but love. My phone buzzed during dessert. A message from Dr. Richardson. Thought you should know, Jasmine was offered a full-time position with the Elder Advocacy Group. She's been promoted to Education Director. She's helping rewrite state guidelines for power of attorney. She's using her story to change systems. I showed the message to Patricia. What do you think? I think people can change, she said carefully. Not all people, and not without tremendous effort. But some people can. The question is whether you want to acknowledge that change. I don't know yet. I admitted. Later that night, after everyone had left, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I called Jasmine's number, not to talk, just to hear her voicemail greeting. This is Jasmine. I'm probably helping someone or in a meeting. Leave a message, and I'll call you back. Her voice sounded different, steadier, more grounded. I hung up without leaving a message. The next morning, I made a decision. I wrote a letter, sealed it, and gave it to my attorney with specific instructions. Don't give this to Jasmine now. Give it to her when I die. Let it be part of my final message. What does it say? He asked. That's between me and my daughter, or rather between me and whoever she becomes. For months later, something unexpected happened. I received an invitation to speak at a national conference on elder abuse. The organizers wanted me to share my story, to talk about how I protected myself, to inspire others to be vigilant. I accepted, but when I arrived at the conference, I discovered something that made my heart stop. Jasmine was there too, listed as a panelist on preventing family financial exploitation. We saw each other across the conference hall. The moment stretched like elastic. 3 years of silence. 3 years of consequences. 3 years of transformation on both sides. She approached slowly, respectfully maintaining distance. I didn't know you'd be here. I can leave if. Stay, I said. You have work to do here. Don't let me stop you. Thank you. She paused. You look well. So do you? It was true. She'd gained back weight, looked healthy, looked like a person instead of a ghost. I'm speaking on a panel about the psychological factors that lead family members to exploit elders, using my case as the primary example. I know. I read your abstract. It was insightful. I learned from the best teacher. Consequences are excellent educators. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said quietly. I may never be ready. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying to make sure what I did never happens to anyone else. Then we're working toward the same goal, just from different directions. I attended her panel, listened to her dissect her own motivations with clinical precision, watched her answer questions from the audience with raw honesty that made people uncomfortable. She didn't sugarcoat anything, didn't make excuses, just presented the truth of what she'd been and what she'd become. After the panel, an elderly woman approached Jasmine in tears. My son is trying to do what you tried, but now I know the signs. You helped me see it before it was too late. Thank you. I watched Jasmine comfort this stranger, guide her toward resources, promise to connect her with legal help. And I saw something I hadn't seen in years, my daughter actually caring about someone other than herself. That night, we had coffee. Not a reconciliation, just a conversation. Two women who'd destroyed each other trying to figure out if anything salvageable remained. I'm not the same person who hurt you, Jasmine said, but I'm also not running from who I was. I'm using it. Every speech, every consultation, every person I help, it's my way of paying a debt I can never fully repay. Debts like that don't have payment plans, I said. I know, but I have to try anyway. Otherwise, what I did just stays evil. If I can transform it into something that protects people, maybe it means something beyond just destruction. That's very philosophical for someone who planned to dump me in a facility with roaches. She flinched, but didn't look away. I deserve that. I deserve worse. But I'm not that person anymore. Prove it, I said. Not to me. To yourself. Live a life that would make that person impossible. Maybe in another 5 years, we can have this conversation again. I will, she said. I promise I will. We parted ways after that conference. No hugs, no false warmth. Just two people acknowledging a shared history and uncertain future. 6 months after that, on my 78th birthday, I received a package. Inside was a book, Breaking the Cycle, Understanding and Preventing Elder Financial Abuse. Author, Jasmine Winters. I opened it to the dedication page. For my mother, who taught me that consequences are the price of choices, that strength comes from survival, and that love sometimes means letting someone fall so they can learn to stand. I'm still learning to stand. Thank you for not letting me get away with falling. I read that book cover to cover. It was good, thoughtful, researched, honest. It used our story but expanded beyond it. It would help people, genuinely help them. I called my attorney the next day. The sealed letter I left for Jasmine. I want to add something to it. What would you like to add? Tell her that transformation is possible, that I saw her try, and it mattered. Tell her that forgiveness is still complicated, but acknowledgement is clear. Tell her that she'll never inherit my money, but she's inherited something more important, the knowledge of what it means to build something meaningful from complete destruction. Should I tell her this now or wait? Wait. Let it be a surprise after I'm gone. Let it be proof that I was watching, even when she thought I wasn't. As I hung up, I realized something profound. Revenge had given me justice. But watching Jasmine transform her evil into good, watching her use her shame as a shield for others, that had given me something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation. Not hope for mother-daughter brunches and family holidays. But hope that people can change. That consequences can teach. That even the worst betrayals can birth something meaningful if the betrayer has enough courage to face what they've done. My empire would outlive me protecting people through the foundation. But Jasmine's work might outlive us both, helping people through education and advocacy. In the end, maybe that was the ultimate revenge. not destroying her, but forcing her to become someone who did good in the world, someone who protected the vulnerable instead of exploiting them, someone who carried her shame but didn't let it define her. I stood at my penthouse window, looking out over Atlanta as the sun set, 78 years old, richer than I'd ever imagined, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, protected by systems I'd helped create, and connected, however tenuously, to a daughter who'd tried to destroy me but had instead destroyed only her old self. Some might say this ending wasn't satisfying enough, that Jasmine should have suffered more, or that I should have forgiven completely, or that we should have reunited tearfully. But life isn't a story. It's messy and complicated and doesn't resolve neatly. This was my truth. I'd survived betrayal, executed calculated revenge, protected myself and others, and eventually witnessed transformation. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and continue building my empire, continue funding the foundation, continue living my life with the people who earned their place in it. And Jasmine would continue her work, continuing to transform her evil into good. We might never be mother and daughter again in the traditional sense, but we were something else now. Two women who'd wounded each other so deeply that we'd both been forced to become better versions of ourselves. And sometimes in the strangest ways, that's what love looks like. Not comfortable or easy or sweet, but transformative, honest, real. I raised my glass of bourbon to the city, to survival, to revenge, to consequences, and to unexpected grace. To empires built from nothing, I said to the empty room, and to the women strong enough to build them, defend them, and decide what they truly mean. The city lights sparkled back at me, full of possibility and promise and proof that at 78, I was just getting started.